What's going on, Christopher? Good to see you.
Hey, yeah, good to see you, David. Well, I'm back out of the hospital, and most of my doctors are convinced that I'm a straggler here from a foreign planet because every time they have the expectation that I'm going to do one thing, I appear to do another, which is kind of funny, but for all of the people who have been sending me their supportive, loving thoughts. I really want to tell everybody I appreciate all the support and all of the energy that has been kind of keeping me above the waves, as it were. And
Well, yeah, it's so good to see you back. I know so many people sent all their love and I always have such a good feeling about you. I'm just always like, he's doing wonderful. He's totally you are a unique person, and your soul has got so many things that you're doing. And this is such a weird time that we're going through, and we're all experiencing, I think, what you've gone through just in our own unique ways.
yeah, I think this has been a cathartic year for a lot of people. And for me, it has been, confrontations with health and trying to identify all these different elements that are representative of different aspects of my consciousness. So, we've got Chiron that has been setting on my natal sun, and it transited over my natal sun, and then it sat there in a stationary direct position. Now it's starting to accelerate back to my sun, and I've got that exact sextile from good old Pluto in Capricorn, sextiling my sun dead on. So I would say both of those planets have had an impact in this adventure. But it seems like the real challenge is to sort out everything that's going on and to try and make sense out of the entire configuration and the collaboration between the planets in our charts. So I think really that it has made me very sensitive to the fact that there is a lot of magic that happens within the chart that we often overlook, we fail to recognize. And I think the more deeply we look at the chart, the more we're able to isolate the circumstances, the situations going on around us, and gain a little bit of comprehension, have a comprehension of what all these elements mean. So that it's not so much about predicting the future, but it's about understanding the moment. I think that's really where we're headed with astrology across the board.
Very true, especially this time we went at it was so deep into pinpointing something in our inner world, very powerful, that's life transformational. It's so transformational, it's so powerful, it's so extreme. And here we are this weekend pulling out of all this finally as Mercury has left Scorpio, and here it is squaring Neptune this weekend. Although Mercury square Neptune can be a little funky, as we could maybe get lost in the wrong direction with thought processes or maybe not quite understand everything. But I think that goes a lot with the whole Sagittarius energy. When Mercury tends to be one that wants to figure out every little detail and Sag wants to expand the horizon, I think it's better for us to be kind of lost and a little bit open and pulling ourselves into dreams or imagination or into this outer world more now, instead of being so caught up in this dark closet I think we've been in, that it's good for us to break open. It's great for us to expand our energy now and expand our thoughts and expand our consciousness now, and make sure that as we expand that we're really paying attention to spirit and signs and our imagination, and making sure we can put both of these areas together to expand in the right spiritual consciousness. And this also deals with unconsciousness. Mercury square Neptune can be unconscious thought patterns or unconscious understandings of things. But the plus is it forces you to find consciousness. And I think it goes so well with what you talked about, is understanding our moment more, understanding what we've gone through. And this weekend really gives us this new perspective now of things and opens up quite a lot. And good old Mars leaves Virgo, comes into Libra.
Yes, thank God. Mars is not happy at all in Virgo, and so it's going to be interesting watching how things shift the minute that Mars actually enters into Libra, because I think we're going to see a lot of things that have been somewhat stagnant start to mobilize now. But yeah, as the sun continues to progress through Sagittarius, things are getting a lot lighter. And interestingly enough, you know, this year has been very ponderous. We've had these grand squares that we had to confront. We've had ongoing trials and tribulations, and it's really like our own karma caught up with us in the worst way imaginable. And now all of those things are finally starting to separate and break loose. So we're watching Uranus in its little mystical dance, and you know, it's moving backwards now and getting a little bit further away from Pluto. We're watching Pluto start to really seriously advance and move forward. As slow as it might be, it still is gaining speed. Saturn is finally moving forward in Scorpio, and the big Scorpio party is over. First, we had the Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn issues that came up that we had to address. Then we had the big Scorpio party, and now things are starting to finally separate. So we're getting more of a sense of relief.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting transit because Mars is going to be in Libra until July 25th of 2014. And Mars is already coming into Libra, which it's different in Libra. It has to be a diplomat at the war grounds. It has to really pay attention to the other opposed to the self. And I think this is a very powerful transit we're about to see in the world, because Mars in Libra represents so much of what I think needs to be fixed, which is more of the diplomat in all of us, more of the peace, more of the balancing out. And when Mars comes in, it forces a lot of us to balance things out. It forces us to pay attention to our relationships and start to step into more of the diplomat in ourselves. But this also finds more peace. And because it's going to retrograde, even though this is a while away, 3 months away from a retrograde, this is going to be a long process that we are starting this weekend. And you always have to pay attention to the change that happens at these crossroads. And sometimes we forget, because it's going to be so far from now when we leave this energy, that you know, this is one of those weekends where I'd pay attention to what events are starting to occur in your life, what this new chapter is enveloping, because I believe that we're stepping into a new chapter this weekend and into this week, and it's a new chapter that takes us a lot out of this world we were in. You know, we can really say we made it through that. We've learned a lot of specific details. We've learned a lot about our inner world. Now let's see what we can do with this. Can we make some changes? Can we open up? And because we're having a Venus transit happening where it's going into a retrograde period, we're going to have Mars and Venus in some very powerful signs here working together, even though they're in squares. But they're in this very, very karmic space between men and women, between masculine and feminine, and they're kind of switched. Mars in Libra is much more of a feminine kind of energy for Mars, I would say, and Capricorn with Venus is much more of a masculine kind of intense energy around the feminine energy. So I think this is a balancing out of the masculine and feminine correctly on our planet, as well as men need to really align their energies more in a feminine and masculine balanced way. And it's time for this feminine energy to become more empowered now and to come more serious and to actually use their powers for more concrete things. So it's a beautiful, very spiritual alignment that we're stepping into this weekend in a very Renaissance kind of way.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with that. I also think that from my observations, Mars is very comfortable in Libra. And most of the Libra males I know have this infatuation with armament and knives and guns and things like that. And I also thought it was kind of ironic that we associate the planet Venus with Libra, and yet I see that differentiation. The male Libras really have a very Martian nature. So I think Mars is going to be very comfortable in Libra during this retrograde. I think it's going to be very insightful, but it's also going to have a tremendous edge to it. So we may see people at peace talks in the Middle East or in Malaysia or wherever going into a significant fail cycle before they can finally find a resolution. Because I think Mars is going to have an edge as it moves forward and then backwards and then forward again in that new home that it's setting up housekeeping in Libra. And Venus is, Venus is very much the planet of luxury, and Capricorn does like to have its physical pleasures. So we may see a little bit of a hedonistic cycle, a hedonistic trend, as Venus goes retrograde in Capricorn and interacts with Jupiter over there in Cancer. You may see people get a little out of control with, gourmet foods, fine wines, overspending, that sort of thing. So it's going to be an interesting issuance into 2014 with these two sets of very personal energies becoming very, very visceral. They're going to have immediate influence on our lives, and we'll see that in ourselves and in the people around us.
Yeah, this is definitely a time to pay attention to, because this whole new chapter really does bring us into some very unique energies that we don't feel often. And we also come into this deeper Scorpio realm, as Saturn now is so far deeper. And it's so interesting that it brings us a Mars in Libra and a Venus in Capricorn. I mean, these are two cardinal points. So these are new beginnings. These are new ways to look at things. And it's interesting that Sagittarius seems to be this sign that's it's in between so much happening. It's in between the power of Pluto and Capricorn changing structures in our life. It's in between Saturn and Scorpio, the intensity of changing our deep inner world and finding our desires. And it's so interesting that in between this is this world of expansion, this world of belief structure, this world of understanding. And as we come through this week with all these new changes coming, it is about perception. It is about making sure that we have the right belief structures. And with Mercury now entering here, this is going to be a very good week of making sure your thought patterns now are opening up, that they're not misguided, but they're guided. Are you sure that you're going to take off in an airplane that's going to the right destination? Is all this energy in Sagittarius. Like, don't be a fool. I think Mercury square Neptune in Pisces and in Sag is the Fool card in tarot very well. That, and if people don't know what the Fool card is, it's a person either A, having the greatest time in their life, or B, they're having a great time and about to fall off a cliff. So, make sure that in your life that you truly take your extra time right now in making sure you're guided in where you're exploring new realms of consciousness and beliefs. Make sure that you're paying attention to your gut and what Spirit's saying. Make sure you're coming from a very beautiful place now that Mars enters Libra this weekend, although Mars enters in at the end on Sunday. So this really is the beginning of the week where I think we're going to start to see this new impact in our lives. I think this weekend is us just kind of getting prepared for the new shift and us really becoming aware of this new energy coming in. And we'll really feel it, I think, Monday as we really push in. The moon will be in Pisces, which I think is an excellent position for all this energy to kind of step in, because it really does tap into a spiritual place. It really makes us kind of accept things very well, go with the flow well, as we're changing gears here, and we're kind of throwing our hands in the air and going in all new perceptions and beliefs of where this new story takes us. Really, nobody knows where it's all going to go at this point.
Well, it definitely is a blank canvas. Absolutely. One of the interesting things I'm noticing here is that as we're moving into the weekend, Friday and Saturday, we'll have the moon transiting through Aquarius, and that allows us to become somewhat remote. When the moon is in Aquarius, the emotional range is kind of suppressed, and we become very analytical, very linear thinking, looking and evaluating what's going on around us. And this will be happening in association with Mars making that step into Libra. So we've got double air and a little bit dry, a little bit barren here initially. Then all of a sudden the moon moves into Pisces and nails Neptune, and that's when the vision arises. That's when we have that breakthrough moment and grab our paintbrush or our violin or whatever and initiate that creative almost orgasm. So I think that this is going to be an interesting weekend for a lot of people because they're going to be looking for what it is that motivates them in the first part of the weekend, and then the latter part of the weekend and into Monday, they're going to go into a creative frenzy. And I think that for people who've been feeling frustrated about their creativity, it's going to be the release mechanism, and the creative flow really will begin.
Yeah, this is a huge creative flow, especially as we kind of step into all this because Mercury's going to start trining Uranus, which I think is going to be this real exciting, fiery, like yeehaw energy. I think this yeehaw kind of comes in my webinar that I did over the weekend. I've been describing a lot of this energy coming in as John Wayne, where you kind of have to just trust John Wayne and kind of go with this positive kind of yeehaw energy and really just kind of sit yourself in for the ride. We're not going to know the details. We're not going to know exactly where we're going, but trust the smile on that man's face, you can't, you got to go. It's like you've got to just go with this energy and come excited and really start to follow the guide of what you want to become, because I think Uranus and Aries is teaching us to really identify correctly. And our perceptions now and our thoughts, we need to really explore the areas that we want to become and believe in this. And I think this week gives us this ability. And more importantly, Saturn and Jupiter make their trine this week. This is a transit that takes a long time to happen because of these, it's two big planets. And for them to hook up in a positive way really creates a very solid, structure in our lives that what we're building from now in this blank canvas you describe is very well positioned. So this is important for us to, I think, build conscious realms if we want to get real deep spiritually, conscious realms correctly, which will manifest in our outer worlds, right? But we've got to pay attention to our emotions now and realize that I think we've gone through such deep places emotionally in order for us to really understand certain feelings that we wouldn't have felt before, because we have not had Saturn in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer hook up in a trine like this. I don't even think for over 100 years. I'd have to look because I don't think the last time Saturn was in Scorpio, both the last two times that we had Jupiter in Cancer. So it's very intense energy that we're going to see through this week that is very supportive and very expanding and has all kind of led everybody to this point to be cleared, to know what you're facing in your fears or your anxieties or your deep inner world, and now paint a better picture to get yourself out of this and to really present yourself with an exciting adventure that makes you just keep pushing forward. Michael Luton, a great astrologer who I follow and love, he used this transit of this week coming up as wagon trails west, pushing on after, deaths and hardship and broken tires and anything, but it's that moment when you get them all back on and you just keep going west. And I think that's where we're at. I think he described it very well, and I think we got to keep going. We got to, this is time to see we've repaired things. Like let's go. And it could be a little difficult because we could be still kind of used to the hardships we've been going through, even though they're not around anymore. So we've got to readjust our brains this week to be back into some positivity and forward-moving optimism.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's exactly as you said. We do have a tendency to repeat patterns because we learn from trauma, we learn from experiences that are frightening, and it burns itself into the brain, and so we're dodging, we're in expectation of the worst possible outcome. And this particular trine, as you said, is definitely a release, and it's a very benevolent trine. Also, we've got Chiron and Neptune up there in Pisces, and even though they're not directly influencing the trine, they are still nonetheless giving us a subtle influence. So you have the power of a grand trine in water that can really open you up emotionally, open you up again creatively, and it can be a catalyst for some significant breakthroughs in different regions of your life. I mean, Jupiter is sitting there in Cancer. What is Cancer all about? That's the home. That's your nest. That's where you're operating out of. And then we've got Scorpio sitting up there in that 8th house. Legacies, heritage, all of those issues coming into play. And then the 12th house, which is, of course, spirit and return to that greater realm of higher consciousness. So this is a very powerful expression coming in our direction from the universe, saying, okay, this is a potential. Where are you going to take this? And I think it's kind of interesting because you're coming out of that Saturn return and that passage of Saturn as it starts to accelerate again upward into Scorpio, and eventually it will be leaving Scorpio. Where are you at now as compared to where you thought you would be with this Saturn return you just went through? Because I know that you were pondering this before the actual events. How did it show up where you were expecting it to show up, and how did it surprise you?
Well, what I think it did was it was massive clearing and massive reboot energy. I think Saturn in Scorpio is when we realize that we have programs that are frozen or stuck or not operating right, and we've got to push reset on the computer. And it's a hard reset, Control-Alt-Delete. For me, it was a complete Control-Alt-Delete of the old life that I was living, these old patterns I was doing, and a complete brand new day that begun. And even as if I'm in the new energy and it feels great, it's a lot of deep clearing cache or clearing files that seem to want to keep loading these old patterns that don't work anymore. Like, that's how I've really looked at Saturn in Scorpio and going through a Saturn return in it, is it clears you completely, but what it does is you somehow realize how embedded our emotional fields really react in our life, that they go all the way to the bottom, and that it doesn't matter when you push reset, even the computer still thinks there's a problem when there's not anymore. And so it's like there's a lot of clearing taking place. There's a lot of intensity that we have to go through as these reboots happen in all of us to find out what we really should be loading. We should really be loading this program. Why was I loading 15 of those programs? That's very Taurus. You know, Taurus wants all the programs. It wants to run a program to run another program. You know, it's like you don't need all these programs in Scorpio. You just need the ones that matter. You just need the ones that really matter. And I think that this is getting us down to the emotional fields that matter the most. And everything else is just bullshit that's just sprinkles on the sundae. That this isn't about the sprinkles on the sundae anymore. This is about the layer of what ice cream you have in your life. Is it vanilla or is it chocolate or is it strawberry? Doesn't matter about all that other crap right now. And so that's, I think, how I would put it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think everybody has felt the intensity of all this activity in Scorpio, and it's going to be interesting to see now if there is a global sense of healing and release, or if it's going to just be much more individualized and much more personal. So as we advance now, we're going to be getting more and more of that sense of how this is affecting this era of awakening and this era of illumination that we seem to be moving into.
Yeah, and this is an illumination period, which sometimes it doesn't look that way because we get so caught up in every little thing. It's just like, it's like you're going through a haunted mansion. It's freaky. But man, this thing is a huge illumination coming in our lives, and this week, as to finish things off here, it's like this is really one of the big, powerful weeks of growth, expansion, because the end of the month gets pretty intense with Mars. Mars is coming into a cardinal sign, and we have got 3 other planets in cardinal signs, so we are starting across again. And this is a week of, I would say get your happiness in, expand your life in the right directions, and take this for a good position, because in the next couple of weeks, we're about to step into some intensity again. It won't be like what we went through, but I do believe that there will be a new chapter that gets very intense. So this could be a week where, enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself and really explore this new possibility, these new exciting feelings, because Mercury trine Uranus is one of my favorite events, but more importantly, when you have the moon in Aries, which is going to conjunct Uranus as it goes over to Mercury in Sag, this is a fire starting up this week that really yeehaws us. It's fire water, It's like, get the Duke out. I love John Wayne. But, it's very John Wayne energy, like, yeehaw, like, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is going to be a fun-filled week because, like you said, we're past that dark passage that we were all having to um, negotiate. And so the cards, let's take a look here. The first card up, Friday, Saturday, I see this as that moon in Aquarius. We have the Temperance card, keeping one foot in spirit, water, keeping one foot on earth, dry land, and really working on maintaining balance and moderation, being a little bit emotionally remote and being the observer. But then as we start to come out of the weekend, we have the very earthy Ace of Pentacles. And this is a card of manifesting things in the material realm. So next week, the projects that you've been working on, the things you've been hoping to initiate, could very well start to accelerate. So be ready. Be prepared to deal with that energy as Jupiter is feeding in to Capricorn and feeding into Pluto on the other side of the chart, because there is going to be a certain amount of receptivity between the two planets here. Even though it's a very wide separation and opposition, it still is going to be interactive. Midweek, a few minor things coming up here, and that again is the energy that we're dealing with in association with that trine of Mercury and Uranus. There may be unexpected events come along. We have to stop and address. The city of your choice that you're living in may show up on your doorstep and say, you've got 58 unpaid parking tickets, and we want you to do something about that right now. So there could be surprises with that flow of energy between Mercury and Uranus. And then by the end of the week, we're moving into kind of another transfigurative cycle. And I think this is as we see Mars really settle into Libra. We're going to feel like a lot of this garbage that we've been trying to remove from our consciousness, from our life, from our soul, is finally in a state of release. So the old body, the old life is dead. 10 swords in the back, but a new dawn on the horizon. So very optimistic as we're moving closer and closer to the holidays, and especially as we're moving closer to the solstice, which is going to be a very interesting day. If I remember correctly, Venus does in fact go retrograde at the solstice this year. So
Yes, it does.
you can prepare for that beautiful period when the sun starts to advance once again, the days become longer.
It's going to be an interesting solstice because on top of that, that week, Mars is going to be in a dead T-square with Pluto-Uranus. So that's going to be one of those weeks. And more importantly, though, I think it's so interesting to see that Venus is basically stopped here for this week. I mean, it's only going to go a couple clicks. Usually it would go 4 or 5, and it doesn't. And we're going to see over these next couple weeks as Venus starts stationary and gets stuck. And on top of that, Uranus is getting ready to go direct on the 17th. So that planet is stopping as well. And these are the, Uranus is pretty much, besides Jupiter, the only planet right now that's, going retrograde. And when that clicks on, it will be just Jupiter. But then, right after that, we're going to have Venus go retrograde. But, this is very now forward-moving times. So interesting that the way this is working because you and I have been doing this pretty much a year now, that in the winter, in the early months of the new year, this is when the universe is pushing everything. And then it's summertime when it retracts it all, and we all have to go through this summer to winter thing of like dealing with our inner world, and then we kind of pull out again. Like it's really it's very interesting on how the universe is doing the same pattern throughout the years. This has been kind of repeating here, and I don't know. This is just this is one of those weeks where I'd ride it out. If there's a chance to ride a roller coaster, ride it. Have fun.
Well, absolutely, and as you were mentioning, the universe is sending us these options, opportunities, messages repeatedly. It's very cyclic, and I think that really the point of all of this is for us to give up our fears, our prejudices, and our anger and resent and inability to accept those who are around us. So it really is moving us to a place of greater compassion, greater love, and an expanded vision of what the future could possibly be. So we're getting closer and closer to a planet where nationalism is no longer become the illness, the measles of mankind. So all of this is going to continue to repeat to a certain degree because we have got to learn the lesson.
Yeah, and this is a karmic time in relationships, and I'd still keep paying attention to those relationships as Venus is in this very interesting place, and she's getting ready to move from the evening star to the morning star. So this is another transitional passage that's very powerful and divine. And look up at night. You'll see her. She's the brightest star you'll ever see. I mean, she is so bright right now. It looks like there's a UFO up in space,
If you have binoculars, you'll notice that Venus is appearing on that southern horizon right after sunset, and it is a crescent and quite beautiful. So it's worth looking up. And we also might mention before we leave here that apparently Ison, in its trials and tribulations, has disintegrated as it got close to the sun. So that gives us options as to what was the meaning of that. It came glancing through the universe and got trapped by the sun and disintegrated. There's something subtle there that we should ponder.
Yep. Well, it's so good to have you back, Chris, and you're an awesome person, and I'm so happy to be back with you. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing what next week brings us.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And, I think probably your vitality is something that a lot of people derive benefit from. So we've got some great things coming up. And we do appreciate everybody who shares our videos and who comments on it.
Yep. Well, thank you, buddy. I will talk to you next week.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.